Hi, I'm Steven, this is Mick, and today we're going to be talking about dating apps. Before we begin though, we just want to say that this is only a discussion. There are no right or wrong answers. These are just our thoughts and opinions which can and will change. Neither of us are experts on anything. We are just two dudes talking. Dating apps today, Mick. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to split it into two parts. The first part, which is what we're doing today, is we'll just talk about, okay, what's the current landscape? What's it like? And then next week, we're actually, once we've discussed that, we're actually going to come up with, okay, if we were to design and build a dating app, how would we go about it? So I guess the first point of order then is, what are our histories with dating apps? And yours is very simple and easy. 0.
Yes.
Which is a good thing. You're lucky. You're a lucky man. But yeah, that's actually very good, because that'll help us maybe while you're learning about it. You know, it'll be fresh. You'll be asking me questions that hopefully the audience will get a good take on it then as well. My history is a little bit different, as you would have picked up from that. I've been using them for a couple of years now. Hasn't been like extremely long, maybe 2 or 3 years. And I have a bit of a experience with a few different types as well, a few different apps. So hopefully that'll give me a bit of information to bring to the table, and we can talk about that. As we begin, I want to start from like a technical side of, okay, how do these apps function? What do they provide? What services? How do they work? Type thing. So there's 2 main groups that we'll cover, and there's I'm not sure exactly how they qualify these, but like a carousel or a swipe type. So if you think of Tinder, where it's like it presents you with a picture and then you go right or left, yes or no, like, dislike. And then there's more of a social media type approach, where it's like you set up a full profile. You can go in, view other people's profiles, send them messages directly and communicate with them like that. Think of it like how LinkedIn is focused for businesses, but you've got like your profile. Facebook, where that's for like people you knew in high school, like it's a specialized social media account. Okay, so that's just at the start. That's a quick background. I'm going to turn it over to you actually now. So usually I'm the one who drives this, but we're going to let you do it this time, and you'll be asking me questions. So Mick, take it on from here.
Sounds good. Hopefully we won't crash. I'll also say that I don't actually use really, or haven't had a huge amount of experience of using social media apps as well. So even the concept of socializing through online social platforms is fairly new to me, although I do have a technical background. And I guess maybe I'll pull that back. The time in which I did use what would maybe considered as a social media platform was all the way back in like IRC chat rooms, or in ICQ, and I think it was ICQ and all the rest of it. So from that point forward, I sort of understood what they roughly were at that time, and then haven't really had Facebook or Twitter or those kind of platforms as well. So the concept of socializing through any online thing is going to be very new for me. So it seems like you broke them into 2 groups, which I think is good. I'm going to start with maybe the first one, which is all about the second one which you presented, which I see as the first one, which is more detailed, and then we can go to maybe the swiping left and right approach with images. So when you, I guess, and I'm going to try and lead on your experience to be able to walk through it, because I like, as you probably have noticed, I like examples, and that's my way to sort of navigate topics. So what was the first profiling one, I guess? I'm going to call it profiling and pictures, just for simple terms for myself. So what was the first sort of profiling app that you actually, or website that you actually used, and how did you first go around strategizing what you put on there, or did you just fill in what you felt, or I guess, how did you fill your profile out?
Yeah, I'll give maybe a little bit more background that will help this talk. That similar to you, I don't really use too much social media either. I'm not that big into it, though I do, again, have a technical background. So when I interact with these applications, I predominantly or first off see it from a technical perspective. How is it working? You know, how is it functioning? What's going on in the background? Like, what can I do with it? which is probably not the best way to interact with these things. But anyway, back to your question. So the profiling type one, the more of a social media platform type one, eHarmony, which is a big one that I don't know how big it is around the world. I think it's an American based one, but we definitely see it. We get commercials on TV here. I don't know. We don't really watch Menu, but don't really watch too much TV these days. But I know that when I do, sometimes I see them. So heavily promoted. What was your question?
So I guess, so eHarmony, I think from my memory, that would have been before Tinder, or I remember hearing about eHarmony before Tinder, probably similar to you, maybe on commercial TV back a long time ago, I think. I don't know how long it's been around, but my guess is it's probably at least 10 years ago that I first heard of that. So I guess so this is...
Maybe how about this? I'll step through the process and then you can jump off from there if you have questions, because that's probably...
Yeah, so I was going to ask, so you come to eHarmony, that was the first profiling one. How did you go about filling out your profile? So what questions did they ask and how did you fill it in? Was it something you could fill in on the spot? Did you have to come back and revisit that?
So this one, it actually starts off with a survey. It asks you questions, because what it's doing in the back end is it's trying to match people together, like give a certain rating. Like it'll actually tell you on there, once you've got it all set up, okay, we've given like you with this other person a certain rating. This is the likelihood that it's going to work out. Or this is based off of all the other information. I don't know what they use, if they do it, if they manually have like scientists or relationship people in the background who come up with how they interact, or if they use like machine learning, which is how I would do it, to say like people with these common traits would match together well. So the first thing you do is a survey, which is about you. It gives you certain questions, like how would you react in this situation? They're all multiple choice questions. Some interesting ones in there where it's like, okay, here's a picture. How do you feel about this, good or bad? And it's like some abstract thing, like a ink blot test. Think of it like that. So I don't know, it's assessing something psychologically based on like how you react to those and trying to match people with you.
Wow, that's very interesting. I never even thought about that. So my first perception was, I need to fill out my name and my age and maybe a few things I liked or whatever. So it's much more, it seems like it's much more rigorous than that. So can I ask, did you had to fill out those standard demographic questions, your age, your name and all the rest of it? Location as well, I'm assuming was part of that?
Yeah, so once you finish that survey, that's when you get to, okay, fill out your profile.
Okay, so the survey comes first.
I'm pretty sure it did, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And that survey is like it seems like an aptitude in some respect. Like they're gauging a personality and aptitude test. They're gauging who you are and your level of, So, and I guess everyone gets the same test or survey. Actually, have you tested that with different? That's a good question. Have you tested that? I wonder if like a male gets the same survey as a female.
I don't know about that. I haven't had that much luck to question someone that deeply about it. I think they are the same test though. And it does give you, it is actually just a personality test, because at the end of it, they do give you a PDF, which has, okay, these are the personality traits. These are your level in each one of those traits. So it is. And it's pretty cool because you can sign up for free. And even if you never want to use this site, I mean, I don't suggest to do this because it would just add a whole bunch of people to the site who aren't actually going to use it. But it is pretty much just a free personality test, because it will give you that printout at the end.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So and that was my next question, is like so the results were actually valuable for you. So did you find something out about yourself by doing that survey the first time? Was there anything that stood out to you that was that you hadn't thought about yourself beforehand, or was it like, oh yeah, that aligns with the way that I perceive myself?
I think there were a few. I can't recall. It's been a while now. It's probably been a year or two since I did it. But there were some things, some personality traits that stood out that I'm like, okay, if they were to ask me how I felt about it, I wouldn't have given that answer. So it was interesting from that respect. Even though I think, I know myself pretty well, there was still some things that other people thought, actually, you're probably more this way than you thought.
Yeah, because it makes sense. I think this survey was probably, I think you're debating whether you do it via AI, or maybe I'll decouple some of the aspects here. So on one hand, I think the survey is probably more likely being created by professionals in order over, various different research in order to get to some kind of important measures and personality traits. But then at some point, those personality traits then go into some kind of machine learning or algorithm in order to try and match you up with other people that are based in the system. Okay, so you filled out the survey. You get your personality traits at the end. Then you fill in your demographic and information, I'm assuming.
Yeah, then it comes to filling out your profile. So some of these standard things, each app there's slight variations on what information you can provide. Majority of them have these ones. So like your name, usually it's just your first name that it shows to other people. You put your full name in for the company behind the app, but for whoever, when it's showing it to people, it just shows you first name, probably privacy things there. Location, where you're located. Now, depending on the app, it'll narrow it down to a city, or for eHarmony, it won't show, it shows like the start of a postcode. So like even you can't see where someone else is located, like what suburb they're in. It'll just show they're within a certain radius and then like the first couple of numbers of their postcode. You can add images to most of them. Most of them allow you to add like a short description of yourself if you want. Then there's prompts that it'll give you. So it'll ask you questions and then you can fill out those questions and say, okay, to give a bit of a background about the type of person that you are, or a bit more information. And then it's got a whole bunch of other things, usually like your occupation, level of education, whether you smoke, drink, or do drugs, pets, previous relationship status, whether you have children, want children, religion, politics, various entertainment interests, hobbies, sports, food, travel, personality traits, like all this stuff. It helps for other people to get an understanding of who you are, but it's also used if you want to filter out people. So if you're like, okay, I don't want to see people who smoke, I'm not interested in people who smoke, then you can say, okay, I don't want that. So yeah, the information is used to give other people an idea about who you are, but also for the system to filter out and do, database stuff.
That's very interesting. So, okay, so the first test is really about how they perceive who you are from personality traits. I mean, obviously you have some control of the input you put into that initial survey, but you might not necessarily be able to foresee what that survey results will actually show. So that part is like their system trying to analyze who you are. And then your profile is how you perceive yourself and what likes and dislikes you have. So like you said, you can now, irrespective of someone's personality traits, you can remove any smokers or someone that might be a drinker or whatever, a religious belief or whatever, you can now filter that out. And then those two combined results then really get fed into some kind of algorithm, or these days probably like a machine learning process. And then that will assign you, potential partners and potential people to link up with. So is there anything else outside when you first start up those two things?
No, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. Again, that first part where the system's trying to understand who you are, they don't all do that. Some of them do. Some of them have like just a few smaller questions that they'll ask you to try and get an idea about who you are. But the majority of them are, okay, just put information about yourself. And then eHarmony is very upfront that, okay, we're using this information to try and match you to people. But even the smaller apps, the swipey apps, they usually claim that, okay, in the background, there's a computer that's trying to match you up with people dependent on the answers you've given or like what information you've provided about yourself. So it'll come to like when we talk about what are some of the issues with it. This is one of the shortcomings that I see with some of these things, is that it's not upfront about how it's using your information in the background to, match you to people or to even give you that little number. Like the other ones don't give you a number, or at least the other ones that I've used don't give you a number of how like likely your relationship is to work, but eHarmony does, and it puts it there. But you really have very limited information about, okay, what does that number even represent? How are they coming to that number?
Okay, and I'm going to go back just one step. So that number is like something I want to talk about a little bit more. But when you did that survey at the beginning, and I know this is more, seems to be more heavily done by some sites and not others. When you did that survey at the beginning and it gave you those personality traits, do you feel that any of those may have impacted the way in which you presented your profile, or was it like, oh, okay, that's great, that's completely separate information to the way I want to present myself or what I want to filter through?
Personally, it was separate, but I do see how people could possibly look at that and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to highlight this about me or something.
Very interesting. Okay, so now you've got your profile set up and it's time for the system to do its work, do its job. And I guess I'm leaning off of your process with eHarmony, and you can branch off into differences with other apps that you've had or websites. So what happens next? Like, did you get a list of people immediately with this number? And we can talk about the number, but I think I just want to go through the list of people. Did you get this list immediately, or did it sort of just spam out like your profile out to other people, and it was in their ability to respond? How does the matching process work, I guess?
Yeah, so they are different. So we'll talk about eHarmony first, but when I get to the other ones, I just want to let you know up front that they are a different process. So you might want to come back to that again later on, or we might want to come back to it. With the eHarmony, it's once you've set up your profile, it shows you can go to a section where it just shows you a whole bunch of people and gives you a name. It's just a list of people with like numbers in the corner to represent, how likely it is that you will match or be a good companion with them. And yeah, you limit it by distance usually, but there are those other filters based on, like I said, like smoking, religion, whatever it is that you're concerned about. But yeah, with this one specifically, and that's one of the reasons I prefer this type of one over the other ones. So I don't use those other ones anymore. Like, I just find I've got a bit of a problem with them. Whereas this one, it's a little bit more upfront. You can just see it's just a list of people. They don't worry about, we'll present you with it. It's like, no, here they all are. You can look at it and, message them or whatever if you want. So yeah, once you're done with the profile, you can look at anyone that's in their database that fits your filter criteria, and then you can look at their profile, go through it, and then if you want to, you can send them a message. So it's very, very open, very allows you to do a lot.
That must have been when you first did that process. Like, to me, that seems like it all happens at once. When you first did that process, did you stop? Did you tick anyone? Did you choose anyone on the list, or did you like, all right, I just got through the process of putting my profile online, I need to think this through a little bit more? Like, to me, that's quite overwhelming. Like, if I go back to a traditional way that you would meet partners maybe before being online, that's like going straight up to a stranger and going, hey, I'm here. This is who I am. What do you think? Kind of thing. So yeah, how did that first process feel? Like, was there a pause between that, or you went straight in?
It was definitely overwhelming. I mean, this depends on what your personality is. Like you said, for me, I'm more cautious about approaching people as well. I don't just, jump in, hey, how you going? Like, no matter who you are. So yeah, I did that, set up the whole thing, and then I'm like, presented with a list of people, and it's like, I'm like, okay, let's just take a step back. Let's, make sure the profile's right. Maybe go through, look at a few of them, but not interact too much at the start, just get my bearings first before going in too deep.
Okay. So, yep. So you took a step back maybe for a couple of days or whatever it was. When you did come back, how did you select the ones? Like, what was the factors you chose in order to select? So you've got, maybe I'm picturing, I guess I'm picturing this one app, but you got a picture, you got a score, and then when you click on that, you get a little bit more information, and I'm assuming you choose it, or yeah. So maybe walk through the process of how you did and what factors you used to select people on.
Yeah. So like I said, it gives you a list of people. So think like thumbnails with just a picture and a name. And I think location and occupation, it shows you as well, all presented up front, and then you can go in deeper and learn a little bit more about them. I will mention first off, with this app in particular, eHarmony, you have to be a paid member in order to see other people's pictures, which is something like, so there's an asymmetry between people using it for free and people who pay for it. So I paid for it, so I have like the full range of things, but you're limited when you're free that you can't see other people's images. And there's some messaging limitations as well there. But yeah, once you start to think about it from that perspective, imagine like you're looking at someone and you're like, oh, okay, they seem cool, I'm going to message them, but they can't see all the information. Not necessarily they can see all the information that you've got as well on your profile. So if they see that you've messaged them and they want to check you out, if they're using the free version, they can't get necessarily everything that you've got, which is a little bit, I'm like, well, what can they see then? What do they know about me? What are they limited to? Which is, yeah, that's why I don't like that kind of hidden what's going on here.
So it's a very much like, it's almost, from my perception, it's like a contrived or controlled interaction between two people. And I understand why people would go down this process, but it seems like you've got a mediator. So like if I go back to traditional ways, like that I, met my partner or met other girls, it was very somewhat random in nature. It was very much like there was no mediator. It just happened out of consequence or a certain second set of circumstances that led up to that or whatever. This one, it seems very controlled in that you have a mediator that helps two people come together. And yeah, like you said, some person might not get the full information of you and you might not get the full information of the other person. And I guess it creates a bit of anxiety in between this process.
Yeah, definitely. And also it is contrived and you don't know necessarily, okay, what angle is the other person coming at it from? Are they seeing this as, okay, if I talk to this person, is it a certainty that we're going to get together? Am I just trying to meet people? Like when you go out on the street, it's unlikely that when you go and talk to someone, they're expecting that, okay, this person's thinking about definitely going to have a long-term relationship or not. But you don't know with this, you don't know what angle they're coming from. And that's where, for me, like I said, when I take a step back, that's where the profile and how they answer their questions becomes important to me, because it's like, okay, I'm trying to get a feel for this person through their answers, through the stuff that they've posted, through the types of pictures. So I'm basically trying to figure this person out all from a profile instead of actually just talking to them and getting an idea about them from their interactions. Like for me, and this is a problem that I have with them, what is it? Don't tell. So actions speak louder than words type thing. Whereas for me, it's like, I want to see how you interact. Like you can tell me whatever you want, but that's not necessarily what I'm going to take from it. I'm going to see your actions towards it. Like if you're telling me that you like soccer, for example, but I can see that you, like in your face, you're like very sour, very depressed. I'm like, well, he's lying to me. Whereas if I can see you're really enthusiastic about it, then it just amplifies what you're saying. So you're trying to do all of that off of, just written pieces of information, just text and images. And that can be quite difficult.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Like there's so many factors in this that I think from my perspective makes trying to find, I guess, what I would consider true love very difficult, because you don't know what you like. So like the idea of filtering out people on location, or that they smoke, or that they maybe drink, or I don't know what the other factors are. But then if I met someone somewhere and I didn't realize that was a part of them, but then I got to connect with them over a period of time, and then I realized that, oh, okay, this person now smokes, my perception of that person is likely different to if I realized up front, just because of my own biases, I guess even. So like having that, it's almost like digitally mediated, taking away that human also connection or dance or human interaction, then I don't think we understand. I definitely don't think you can digitally represent it, but I don't think that we even completely understand why we are attracted to certain people and what that actually means. And I can imagine it was very difficult. So I'm going to, I guess eHarmony was the first one that you sort of tried to do. So maybe you can talk through as you got familiar with I don't want to go to the swiping apps just yet. But as you started to get familiar with this profiling one, maybe you did 2, 3 or 4 different of those profiling sort of approaches. What did you see change from different sites? I'll start there. What did you see that changed from different sites?
Like different sites similar to eHarmony, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so we're sticking in that profiling range where it's not just an image that I'm guessing an image is a condensed version of this, but so I guess we're sort of leading to Tinder towards the end. But the profiling one, was there other sites that actually included more information? Was it less? Like, how did they differ, I guess, by trying to stick to this kind of LinkedIn or Facebook approach, profiling approach?
Yeah, most of them are similar. I think out of all the ones that I experimented with, so I initially when doing it, I did like any good engineer does his research and looked at the different ones that were available and what they offered. It seems like eHarmony had the most. It sounds like I'm promoting them. I'm saying their name so much. I'm sorry. They're all right, but like I don't know about it if I was be promoting them. Maybe if they're sponsoring us, it seemed like they allowed you to, express or give the most amount of information about yourself and to see the most amount of information about other people. But all that's opt-in as well. So like bare bones, you can just have an image of yourself on the website with a few other main things like you have to do occupation, education, smoke, drink, drugs, pets, relationship, whether you have children or want children, religion and politics, I think. Actually, they're not enforced. Not all of those are enforced even. Occupation is, and then I don't know about the rest. You may be able to get away with not putting that information up. So you could have like bare bones information about someone, which is, we'll get to those swipe ones, but that's pretty much, most of them are like that, where it's just an image and then a couple of little things about them. And you're trying to get an idea of who they are from very minimal information. I want to go back to what you said though, before we continue that. I try to, when I do it, reduce the amount of filters I have as much as possible, because like you said, I don't know, like maybe I think that that's going to be something that is a turn off for me, but I don't know this person. I don't know what has led them to that. Maybe actually I will appreciate them more, even though they do something that I maybe don't agree with. So yeah, that is definitely something that is an issue when you're doing these things and you're filtering people out by certain traits that they have or certain hobbies that they do.
Yeah, occupation's an interesting one that in this case it was enforced like that. You don't, like the way I would see it is if you randomly met someone, the first thing you wouldn't say to them, what's your occupation? And if you did, you would be considered like some kind of gold digger or what, some kind of, a narrative being driven, I guess. And I do think part of the attraction is someone does something different to the way that you do it. And that is an important balance. I think that is something that if you can get right in a relationship really works, is that they often say opposites attract. And so, the concept of having opposites attract and getting a fine balance of that is that you have your ways in which you do something, but then you can appreciate how someone else does something and what they can do by doing it that way as well. And you're like, it might not be something you achieve, or even it might not be something you're completely aligned with, but there's an appreciation for the opposite ways in which things can be done and all the rest of it. And it keeps you in, I guess, a good harmony. Other people might not necessarily might not be comfortable with that. Some people might be more comfortable with someone that's well aligned with their beliefs and all the rest of it. But I do find, I wouldn't have known that up front, but I do find that that's what I would definitely prefer. And I think if I had to go through a digital mediator like this, I don't know where I would start, to be honest.
Yeah, there's definitely people, like I know friends that do it who are more really concerned about, okay, what type of religion are they? What background do they have? Where are they from in the world? Like that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm similar to you. Whereas when I'm looking through these and I'm reading someone's profile, it's like, okay, I'm trying to figure out what are your principles and values. Like, what are your character traits? That's what I really care about. The rest is just, I don't know. I have no idea what I want beyond that. Like, I want to be surprised. Like I know I don't want someone who's exactly like me. I know me. I'm fine. I've got that covered. It's like, yeah, just as long as we've got the important things in common, which is like your principles and values and certain character traits. Beyond that, it's fine. So it's really trying to weed out from the information that is provided what they are.
Yeah. So when I go back to something you said before, is that you sort of kind of like the way. Again, I hate saying eHarmony again because it feels like we're promoting, and I guess we get to others later. But that you like the way that I felt that you liked the way because you felt in more control about the information that was being shared or presented, or the way in which you could choose that. So in the beginning, did you feel that you were trying to control the situation, and then over time you realised, I can be a little bit more relaxed with this. I can open it up and not necessarily choose a whole lot of variables that will narrow down my search. I would be more broader in my thoughts.
So how I present myself versus what I'm looking for, how I present myself has changed over time because it's impossible for any individual to present all that they are in, like from the prompt boxes that they give you, from the space that they give you. So I'm like, okay, what are the fundamental things about myself that I want other people to see? What I'm looking for in someone else, that has remained pretty static. Like I was never too specific about, okay, they have to have this, this, and this. It was always like, okay, what are their character traits? So the reason I chose eHarmony as like the first one that I got into, and like the one that I stick to today, is that it is more likely that if someone who signs up for that, because most of the time you want to be paying to use the full service. Otherwise, the free version, like you're so limited in what you can do. Someone who will take that time is more likely to fill out those prompts and give other people a better idea about who they are. So I've got more information to work off of when I'm looking for someone else. So that, for me, is the main reason I choose that one above the others, is because I can look at them and say, okay, I've got more information. But that comes down to what you're looking for, in whether you're looking to date, whether you're looking for a relationship. Like, what are you looking for? And for me, it was like, I'm looking more for a relationship. So I want to have a bit more information about the person before I, try and talk to them or make a connection with them.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's very interesting. And then I guess as you go into, maybe I bring up the way in which these apps change through a technology lens, and then we can come back maybe from a possibly even a business perspective. But from a technology lens, right, it seems like eHarmony gives you the greatest level of exposure to what the parameters are and what's happening underneath. And then I guess as you go forward, I'm going to jump, and then I think we can go through the spectrum. I'm guessing, and you're going to be able to correct me on this, something like Tinder really gives you minimal information. The idea is to get through the decisions as quickly as possible and to get to the answer as quickly as possible, but you don't really have that fine control or understanding of how the system even come to that suggestion. Would that be correct, or would it be something a little bit different?
Yeah, maybe we should explore one of them, and then that will give you a bit of an idea, and we can go from there. So just to mention, I haven't actually used Tinder. That's like one of the few of those swipe type ones that I haven't used. It's the main one, but I was like, everything that I've heard about it, that is like the most shallow you can get in terms of a dating app. It's literally just a picture and if they choose to, a very short bit of information about them. So I was like, okay, I want a little bit more information than that. So the main other ones, I've used two of those swipe type ones, and they're Bumble and Hinge. And so the main differences between them, Bumble is oriented towards giving the female more control over the experience. So it's like the way it works is asymmetrical depending on if you're male or female. I think you can do same-sex relationships and that. I'm not sure how it works there, but I know like the what is it, hetero, how that would work. Hinge, the difference there is, so Bumble is more you choose what information you want to present to the other person, so it doesn't enforce too much on you there. Hinge, it actually enforces you to put up a certain number of pictures and answer a certain number of prompts. So you have a minimum bit of information that you're going to get from someone else. So that's why that one, I was like, okay, this seems like reasonable, because then apart from like I said, eHarmony, where they're giving you hopefully a lot more information. This one at least enforces that they give you a little bit more depth of information. Whereas Bumble, it's just like you need to put up a picture. I think that's minimum requirement. There's a few things like where you're located, blah, 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 your name. But then after that, like character traits, answering any prompts, that's all up to you how much you want to share there.
So the underlying technology probably doesn't change that much. It's more around what parameters are used and what is exposed to you and what's enforced, I guess, in the differences. So when you went to these ones,
that and how you match with people. So I guess maybe I'll talk a little bit about how that works if you want.
So when you say match with people, is that the algorithm that matches you, or do you have some control over that?
No, so that's not what I was referring to. So I think you've got a pretty good understanding about how eHarmony or these profile ones works. It gives you a list of people. You can click into them. You can see information about them. That's not at all how these swipey ones work. What happens is they present you with a person, like their profile. And from that point, you either go, yes, I would like to interact with this person, or no, I wouldn't like to interact with this person. In order for you to even talk to someone, both of you have to have said, yes, I want to interact with this person. So it'll give me a whole bunch of people. You go left or right, depending on which one's like, dislike. And then, so, okay, say you say, okay, I want to interact with this person. They look interesting. I want to talk to them. And until they have been presented with your profile and they have said the same thing, you don't interact with them. You don't know anything else beyond that. Like once you swipe left or right, all that information is gone. It's totally out of your hands. If they don't, you may never see that again.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, and maybe this is something I overlooked with the first one. So with the profiling one, you get to see each other's information. And then how does the acceptance process works in that? So you send a request and they have to accept, and and that's how you, but that acceptance process is after you get the information.
Yeah, you're still presented with the information in the swipe ones. The profiling one, you can go back to it. It's like, have you ever used Facebook or a social media thing, or have you seen it?
Yeah.
It's like if you were to type in someone's name, but you don't type in their name, they're just presented in a list here. And then you select them, then you see their profile. You can choose to send them a message or not. They can do the same with you. There's like no limitations there. The way, like if you were to just keep on spamming them, they can block you so they don't get the information. But it's open. So anytime you want to communicate with someone, it's like, okay, I'll send them a message. So there is no limitation whereby they have to accept you or anything. You can send them a message and then they can choose to respond to you, or they can choose to just leave you, or they can choose to block you. It's up to them. So that's like completely open.
Okay, so I think I now know the difference. I'm going to relay it back a little bit. So in one situation, the profiling one, it's like I can send an email at any point in time. I can block emails, obviously. I can block spam, but basically I can send that, and you can determine when to respond or not to respond. With the swiping one, it's like accepting a friend request, I guess. It's kind of like when you first swipe to him, you can't really send them anything. It's just saying, this person's requesting to be able to communicate with you. Do you accept or decline? And then if they decline, then it goes nowhere. But if they accept, you now have a form of communication that you can do between each other.
You're correct about how it works, but it doesn't, depending on which app it is, it won't necessarily tell the other person that you have said, I want to communicate with you. It may not even show you to the other person. And this is where like the monetary side of things comes in, where it's like you can swipe, it's usually right to accept, right? So you swipe right to go, okay, I want to communicate with this person. That gets logged in the database in the background, but you may never actually get presented to the other person. Once the other person sees you, it doesn't say that you want to talk to them or anything. They have to just by themselves looking at it go, hey, I want to connect with this person as well.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. So, okay, so I'm trying to imagine it from a technology point of view, but I'm also seeing the human interaction. So basically with these swiping ones, the system creates a list, and I'm guessing there's some kind of scoring that's involved in that list. So like in eHarmony, you got presented a likelihood score. I'm guessing this list of people that get proposed to you when you swipe, there is some kind of scoring system happening in the background. And part of that scoring system is impacted by other people wanting to connect with you. But you might never get to that you might be down here on that list and you might never get there, or it might not even put you in that list if the system determines, yes, you wanted to connect with that person, but we don't see that you fit, so we're not going to put you in the list, or we're going to put you right down the bottom.
Correct. It's filtering out the people that it presents to you. Now, that filters can come from your own, okay, I don't want to see people that are whatever. So like, even if I swipe right on someone, but they don't want to see people who are, I don't know, male, I don't know any other trait about myself that everyone else would be familiar with. If they don't want to see males, it's never going to show you to them because they've filtered you out themselves. But there could be other filtration devices going on in the background, like in the database that we don't have access to. Like, it looks at you and says, oh, this person hasn't paid, I'm not going to show you to the other person at all. And you don't know that information.
Okay, so from a technical point of view, it's like AND logic. So it's like two people need to swipe yes in order for the system to connect to you. And until that occurs, you won't connect with them regardless if you've swiped. And the OR logic, I mean the AND logic, I'm sort of saying AND because one and the other need to accept, that AND logic is controlled just through a list that gets presented to you.
Through a list, and if you yourself, want to connect with the other person.
But you don't get to the AND logic until in the list both of you get presented with each other.
Correct.
Wow, that's blown my mind.
So you start, I mean, you understand it from a technical level, so you can start to see how the system can be manipulated. And especially if it's not transparent what's going on in the background, you don't know if anyone actually ever sees your profile. If you swipe, I want to connect with someone, you don't know if they've ever seen it. Even worse, you don't know if that person has quit using that app. Like if they've just deleted their account, you don't know. That could just be, an empty entry in the database that they're presenting you with. It could be a ghost. It could be another computer. You don't know what it is.
So it's purely a numbers. It's like almost like a numbers. It's like a numbers game.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you, what made you try to change? So at some point in time, you're exploring different dating apps, right? So what made you decide to try and explore these ones? What was the first kind of attraction to try and do something different or whatever?
Exposure.
So for yourself, it was a numbers game as well, I guess.
Yeah, because like I said, I like the eHarmony platform, but the problem is most of the features you have to pay for, and a lot of people aren't going to pay for it. And it's also like, it takes a lot more effort to set up in this. So there might not be as many people that you're presented to. Whereas if you go on these other apps, most of the process to set up is easy and most people will do it. And it's a bit of a game, so it's a bit of fun. So there's a lot more people there that you might get exposed to. So it's like, it is a numbers game. It's just odds at that point.
Oh, that's okay. So that's interesting. So basically it means that the system, so for people that might not ever get selected, they might get presented more in a system which is a swipe system than one which is a profiling system, because everyone might not select on that profile given the information. Whereas with the swiping system, they're random. Well, there's some logic to it, but they're being put in lists. So the system itself could present that person more. I mean, that doesn't mean that you would swipe with them. Yeah. Okay.
But also you got to remember, it's not as if every single human being is on these platforms. Like it's a limited pool as it is. And then it's a lot of the time based on where you're located in the world. Like we live in the shadow of a big city. If I was in Melbourne, you get a lot more people popping up because there's a lot higher population. There's a lot more people using these type of things. But because we're like an hour away from that, I get a lot less people showing up. And that's another thing that I think factors into it. You got to also find someone who is willing to talk to someone that may be far away from them, like, which may be a difficult thing. Like you're saying, if you're doing it in person, the distance between you is like a meter. If you're doing it online, distance could be anywhere on the world. So it's a bit difficult to find people who will even just be like, oh, okay, I'll talk to this person. I don't know where it's going to lead, but it doesn't matter that they're like 50 kilometers away from me. I'll still talk to them.
Very interesting. Okay, so I think I understand it from a technical point of view and kind of understand the differences in the way it gets done. Is there one way which you lead to, or you sort of see it as like a hybrid approach that you do? Like you sort of use some of the swiping and some of the profiling and you sort of back and forth, or did you go one way and then come and fall on another certain way, a strategy that you do it?
I don't use the swiping ones anymore. The way they work and like, I don't know, it's weird. You gotta try them out to understand, I guess. There's a certain psychological thing that goes on where it's like, I don't know. I think it's unhealthy to see so many different people, like to put people into, to dehumanize people. Really, I guess that's what's happening. You're turning them into this object that you're being presented with. That within, well, it depends who you are. I generally take the time to read through people's profiles before I make a decision. But yeah, to just be presented with an entire human being and then to go, yep, nah, like that. I don't know. There's something psychological that just never sat well with me. So I was like, yeah, I'm happy to get rid of those ones.
Yeah, it's interesting. I could see different people would be attracted to different things. So the way I visualize it, because I'm going back to like traditional ways in which you would meet people, I can imagine one way is like you've known a friend for a bit of while, and then you get comfortable with them, and then you see, oh yeah, our personalities align, and you might grow from that. But then there's other ways which people meet, and it's like going to a nightclub and just seeing a whole lot of random strangers, and then all of a sudden they attract from that point of view. I guess the swiping one sort of aligns to me as like a nightclub situation, but I don't think it works anywhere as beneficial, because you're taking away the ability to have that human interaction and you're digitizing that information. And so it's like I feel like it's like a false economy in some sense.
Even in a nightclub, you've already got something in common. You're at the same place at the same time. There's certain factors in your life that led up to that happening. So it's like, okay, we've already got a common starting point. Whereas this, you could be anywhere. The only thing you have in common is that you're either looking to date, or you're looking for a relationship, or you're looking to get to know other people. So, there's very few things that you've got that are the same about the two of you. So
okay. So from the experience, would this be a kind of generalized statement that if you're trying to look for a proper relationship, or a long-term relationship, I guess, you would be more inclined to go down the profiling one. But if you're someone that's more inclined to have a one-night relationship or a short relationship, you're sort of going to the swiping one? Or would that be a good generalization?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And like I said, I think that's the main reason why it doesn't work for me, these swiping ones, because I'm not interested in that shallow, like one-night physical relationship. Whereas, yeah, more power to you if that's what you're in for. It's just the understanding that that's kind of what you're going to get with these apps. It's unlikely. It could happen that you form a meaningful long-term relationship with someone, but it's unlikely from the way that it is set up to facilitate that.
So from a business sense, it's covered the whole landscape, I guess, in different people's emotional needs maybe, or relationship needs, I guess. So the business landscape has gone wide in that it caters for people that want long-term relationships, all the way down to people that just want short-term, maybe considered superficial or one-night stand relationships. How do you think do you think that unfolded over time? Like, what are the business drivers, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's easier to monetize the more superficial type of thing. And I think that's kind of how it evolved. When you think about it, Tinder was more like where it started. So it was always really superficial.
Was it the one that first started?
Yeah, they did have like those profiling ones, which were more for relationships. But when they became apps, like I would think the profiling ones started more in the internet age on computers rather than mobile phones. And when mobile phones came out, that's when dating apps came out, and it was more the swiping game.
It's kind of evolved similar to, I don't know, this is an interesting thing. I wonder if it's evolved similar to how our social media platforms evolved, in that it's got more condensed, more numbered game. Like, so if you think about like, what did it start with that I remember? The first sort of social media platform started with MySpace. And that was all about having a page about yourself, or maybe a group, a band or something like that. So it's basically about presenting the world who you were, and then certain people could possibly interact with you. Then I guess it moved to Facebook, which probably follows a very similar theme. But then we started to, I don't know if my memory's right, but I think Facebook was after MySpace, and then it was started to go to Twitter, and now we've got Instagram, and now we've got TikTok. And it seems like the interactions as it's evolving is speeding up and becoming shorter interactions with less information and trying to grab the attention and the excitement or the emotional response to that as quick as possible in order to fill something, a need of yours, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. The question is, what is the incentive? What is the driving force that is making that happen? Is it the user base is wanting that, or is it the people who are developing this are pushing that on people for whatever their incentive is, whatever their motivation is? And I guess that's a good way to lead into how the business model works for these things. So for a lot of the swipe ones you can use for free, but they are severely limited when you use the free one, not in terms of what you're doing, but in how you are interacting with other people. Like I said, you don't know if you're ever going to get presented to someone else, but if you pay, then they preference you over the free people. So you already got a higher level of being, exposed to them. Other things they do is they limit the amount of filtration you can do. So if you're looking for something specific in a person, like if say you are looking for a relationship and there may be 2 or 3 different things that you really want to make sure the other person has before you get into that relationship, it may limit you and say, no, you can't filter anything. We're just going to present you with everyone. You have to manually filter out. So they get you there by, you could just go through each one and say, okay, they don't have this, they don't have that. They get you there by, again, making it more energy efficient for you to pay the money, and just they'll filter out everyone else and they'll just present you with the ones that you want. So they do things like that. They, like I said, they have, I think on Tinder they call them super likes, where it's if you pay like $2 or something, I can't remember what the price is, they will definitely show you to the other person if you swipe on them. And then other things like, okay, if you say, no, I don't want to meet someone, but then you change your mind, you can't go back and see them again and go, hang on, I actually do want to. So say, for example, say it's not even that you change your mind, say you just accidentally go the wrong way. It's like, oh, okay, they're gone. Goodbye forever.
It makes sense. So if I think about it from a business model point of view, so what they're doing is they're selling you convenience, right? Which is not uncommon. That's common in everything. But I guess what's different about technology is that it's you're trying to sell convenience at nearly as much interactions that happen as quickly as possible. So if I think about sales, what I want is to get a high volume of sales. Each sale has a cost associated to that. And then it's purely just a numbers game. Like the more things that I can sell you at a higher speed, the more likely my profit will be, particularly if it's a low cost. That's what I think has happened in the digital age, anything online. So people see, I think Netflix and all this have definitely leaned on that value. I used to remember going to, Video Easy or Blockbuster or something like that, where it was a video store and you'd lease out the video. And an overnight video would cost you $5 or $6, right? And that happened for a big period of time. And in Australia, which was different to America, they introduced cable TV, I think around the early to mid 90s. And then you could actually get more, but it was like $100 a month. I think what's happened now is companies like Netflix, where Foxtel might have, or your Blockbuster, maybe Blockbuster is not a good example because it's like McDonald's, it's around the world, but they sort of had low number of interactions. So the cost of each interaction they needed to make a bigger markup on. But as you globally grow your this is like a user base in the technology. As you grow that, you can convince people to put in less money and get higher number of volume of sales and make the same value off of that. So it's much easier to sell something to you for $1 than $10. And if I want to make the same amount of profit, I've just got to get more people to give me $1 or more interactions where you just say it's $1 than me to convince less number of interactions at $10. Do you think that based on those comments with eHarmony, is it like an upfront cost? And has it become more modular as you go down to these newer technologies where it's about number of interactions.
Yeah, it is. I didn't say how eHarmony works, but yeah, you pay for a certain period of time, whereas these other things are more one-off type things where, like I said, okay, we will promote you more for an hour. If you give us $1, we will show you to someone if you give us $2, whatever it is. And yeah, that's definitely the way it works. From the company's perspective, from a business perspective, I don't know if that works though, because they keep increasing the prices and keep like trying to modularize it and add more. It's like, is that really working for you then if you're having to keep on changing it? But I guess it is. From the human user perspective, like, I think that's very detrimental that you know, what is that doing to the human, forcing them to, or highlighting them because they'll pay money? Like, what does that say about us? I don't know. And the other thing is, your incentive then to get people together, which will result in them no longer using the service, is not there. Your incentive then is to keep them there as much as possible so that they'll possibly give you money into the future. So yeah, what's going on there? What is the objective of the business or the company behind the application then? Is it to get people together, or is it to keep them apart and make money?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, and I think it's something that we'll probably touch on in future podcasts. To me, it signals, yes, I would say that it does work. Like you're saying, your idea that doesn't really work because they modularize it more, there's more charges, and they just increase it up. My guess is, yes, that's a signal that they're looking for the boundary. So they're saying, we're going to continually keep growing our profit until we get rejected on this. Right. And so by slowly doing that, what's the old frog analogy? You slowly boil a frog in water. It's the same kind of concept. $1. Oh, it's only $1.20. It's only $1.50. Oh, it's just this one. It's just this one. And so slowly they're growing their profit. So that's that concept in my mind of like production for profit. They keep producing and acquiring that profit. And then, like you said, is that, that then comes into this moral question of what you were saying just a second ago, is that now, should you trust that service? Because if they show signs of where they keep pushing and pushing and pushing in order to continually grow their profits, you now have the question of, do they really want people to have a long-term relationship, or is it much better for them to have a short-term relationship and them to come back the next night? So in my mind, from the business sense, a app that actually promotes one-night stands is the most value from a profit sense, because you're going to come back the next day and the next day and the next day. And each month you're going to purchase a little bit more. And if I can make you feel even less confident about yourself, I can actually then get you to try and promote, pay it $2 to be, what was it? A super user or whatever it was. A super like. Pay dollars and, $2 to be a super like. The reason I'll be paying that $2 is I'm not confident in myself, or I'm not confident in the system, or whatever it is. So yeah, I can definitely see that the drivers for business in the trying to make people for relationships or love is there's a road at which these might come in, or looks like they are coming in conflict.
Yeah, I like the way that you put that you see it as they do work. And I do agree with you after you explained it, that if they are making adjustments to it, if they are increasing the price, it suggests that it is working because people are willing to pay it. And the effect that has, like you said, that's just, okay, how do we get them to continue to pay it then? Okay, well, we need to make them more insecure. We need to shape them and mold them. It's the apps are now changing the customers instead of the customers changing the apps, which is very scary, because what is their incentive? Like we said, maybe their incentive isn't necessarily to make you a worse person or to make you feel bad or anything, but it ends up going in that way because that's how they get the money out of you.
Yeah, it's a really tricky situation. And I think I think it just leans onto, and I don't know how, I think we're just evolving, but it leans onto some of the flaws that we have in systems in general that we adhere by today. So like, I guess the only way that these dating apps are going to be around is the fact that people, there is a need and they need to be able to have some kind of income in order to sustain the services that they provide. I guess the trick comes in how much growth or how much profit that these services want to acquire. And unfortunately, we have systems which, I guess, promote continual growth. And that becomes a problem in this situation because I don't think anyone sets out to create a day. I would assume that in its raw sense, I think people were obviously wanting to do a dating app to help people connect and have relationships. And I would assume there's a lot of people that work in those businesses that are striving to do that. I guess what ends up happening is the systems around that, the systems in which the people work within leads to these collective decisions that have detriment to people. So like that idea of the system that we want this continual growth forces people to come up with ideas that they can then have paid services for. But the ideas behind that is to, the intention for maybe a lot of those ideas might be to, in that moment, it's a brainstorming intention. If we just do this, then there's a likelihood that people will do that. But collectively, you see, no, actually, over the longer term, it actually there's systems set up so that it promotes more interactions. It gets people back having less confidence. It gets people coming back to the site all the time. And it's not obvious to the individuals trying to, make these apps necessarily.
I think it's impossible to create a dating app or relationship app if you're bound by the fact of perpetual growth, because how it works is you grow by keeping people apart, which is in conflict of what you're supposed to be doing. So the better you get at something, the better you get at doing what you want to do in this system, the worse you actually get at it. So as you're growing, as you're earning more money, as your business is expanding, in order to do that, you have to keep people apart, which is in direct conflict with what you're supposed to be doing. So it's impossible then in a system where you are aiming for perpetual growth to have something like this, a dating app, because by its nature, it would be, what's the word? Deflationary. It would reduce over time.
It's an interesting point, and one I agree with you wholeheartedly, but I'm going to be a devil advocate and say, well, my dating app should continually grow because the population in the world continually grows. So that's the objective I'm going to have. And while that might be a one in which I don't agree necessarily with, I could see someone else justify their objective because of that as well. So, and I'm going to be a little bit careful here because I don't want to get into growth because this actually leads into a lot of different areas. I don't think it's just dating apps in general, but I think what we have done today is being able to discuss the challenges of having a business tied to a dating app and that business wanting to sustain some level of growth over time and what those that objective can lead to when we're talking about relationships.
I think you're right. I think what matters is the rate of growth compared to both of those. How fast are you trying to grow your business versus how fast is the population growing? And if you've got them in balance, you may be able to maintain it. But it seems that the rate of monetary growth is far outpacing the rate of population growth.
That's a very good way to put it. Yes, and I think technology in general has come to that issue in a lot of ways. I think, is there anything that you could maybe add on top of this? So we've sort of talked about the different dating apps. And maybe a little, possibly even a bit of the history, how it sort of started off as profiling, and then it went into very more quick numbers game. We looked at sort of the technology that underlies. You have some level of input particularly in the earlier systems. It seemed like you had a lot of input and a lot of exposure to the information about how the dating app made decisions or prompted you with opportunities, as opposed to newer apps which are really designed to just get a quick few numbers in and we'll figure it out for you for convenience. And then just looking at the business drivers that may have led from, having those profile apps, trying to have the objective of long-term relationships, and how that may have skewed it into what we see in some of the newer apps like a Tinder app, where it's, it seems like there's this self-perpetual one-night stand objectives with it. And, it's not necessarily the people that sign on to it that wanting that necessarily. It's that cycle between the system and themselves that have got them there, I guess.
Yeah, in going through it, I think the only thing that I would really want to say is that it's okay as long as it's obvious that that is what you want. Like, I'm not here to say what is healthy, what is a good way to be, but if you are looking for that dating experience, that one night experience, then it's fine to have apps that cater towards that. But be blatantly honest about that is what our app is doing, because you're attracting in these other people that are thinking that it's aimed to do something else when it's not, and that is having a negative effect, or possibly in my case it's having a negative effect, but I can't speak for others, but I assume also for other people it's having that negative effect. So again, as long as you're being honest and transparent, you can have that. But that's my main concern, I guess, is that it's not highlighted that that's actually what these things are driving towards.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I think that's actually a really good point, is that, whatever your preference is, as long as the app is being authentic, presented authentically to you what its objectives are, then at least it's up to you. It's your responsibility to make your choice. Whereas maybe some of the newer apps where they unfortunately might promote short-term relationships, there might be selling a dream of that you can find your true love through this avenue, and yet their objectives probably could be going against that. And so if the app turned around, so something like Tinder, I don't know how it's promoted, but I'm thinking if Tinder was promoted that it is like, okay, it's the one night stand app, which I think is informally how it's being understood, but maybe not formally presented that way, then that would be okay, because people could understand. They wouldn't waste their time or waste their energy in some kind of app that didn't really work for them. And maybe it would have helped you in the long run, like, this is the one night stand app, so it's not really what I'm after, so I'll stick to these. Whereas you sort of had to go through and figure this out yourself because of false pretenses.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even like you said, informally it is known, like these type of swipe things are known as the dating app, the hookup apps. And I knew that at the time as well, but I'm like, I'll still give it a try, because they weren't pushing it as that. Like, these apps aren't pushing it as that. So yeah, I think you're 100% spot on there. So any other questions about it?
No, fantastic. I think I've learned a hell of a lot about dating apps and how it's changed over time. And I will say one thing, and maybe it's just because of my age, but it does seem a shame that, and it would have been particularly difficult through COVID, but or lockdowns in general in different situations, but it seems a shame that maybe we lose the ability to just go out and randomly stumble across someone. Yeah. So if you are on dating apps and you're looking for a long-term relationship, I would also suggest just, going to a concert or going down to, out to a pub or somewhere where there's social interaction or opportunities of social interaction with strangers.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and I hope to do more of that in the future and get off of these things. All right, well, we've set ourselves a pretty difficult task for the next one. We're saying it's almost impossible to create one of these apps. Maybe I'll just note, leading up to the next one where we actually go and develop one, we'll say, if you are happy with this, that we're not trying to create a dating app, we're trying to create a relationship app. And then I think we can, work our way around that with that as our goal. Happy with that?
Yep, happy with it.
All right, cool. So my supplemental song suggestion for this week is Jermaine Stewart's "We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off." And my quote is, "Perfect is the enemy of good." And that's by Voltaire. Thanks for joining us for this discussion. We look forward to hearing your feedback and thoughts about the topic we discussed. As always, be well.